Cover her divorce, or you're disowned from this family." My mother bellowed, her palm hitting my cheek. That sound reverberated through my home office, where 5 unseen cameras fed footage directly to my attorneys. What unfolded next would change our family forever. The unexpected crack of her palm against my cheek was a physical shock, yes, but the deeper, gut-wrenching blow was realizing it came from the very woman who'd given me life. My home office, usually a sanctuary of quiet focus, suddenly felt like a battlefield, the air thick with something volatile and sickening. For 3 weeks, those tiny cameras I'd installed had been silently watching, recording Charlotte's increasingly aggressive demands for money, a precaution my attorney had insisted upon. Never in my wildest nightmares did I imagine they'd capture this. My mother, standing just inches away, her face a mask of contorted rage, her hand still raised slightly in the aftermath. "Did you really just hit me?" The words felt distant, an echo in the ringing silence, yet they emerged steady, almost disbelieving. But beneath the calm, my hands were clamped to the edge of my desk, white-knuckled, trembling so violently I thought the cheap veneer might splinter. Mom's fury didn't falter. Instead, her jaw clenched tighter, her eyes blazing with a righteous indignation that sent a cold shiver down my spine, a chilling echo of countless childhood arguments. "You deserve worse than that," she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "Your sister needs you, and you're sitting here like some heartless accountant, counting your money while her life falls apart." Just then, a shadow detached itself from behind my mother, and Charlotte materialized, tears already streaming down her face. It was a performance so polished, so practiced, I could almost hear the director yell, "Action." Her voice, a perfect stage whisper, cracked flawlessly on cue. "Please, Eric cleaned out our joint account. Sophie needs new shoes. Dylan's asthma medication costs $200. I'm begging you." Here's the thing about growing up with an older sister like Charlotte. You learn her patterns. You become intimately familiar with the carefully constructed victim narrative she perfected since she was barely a teenager. It's a powerful psychological tool, designed to evoke immediate sympathy and obligation, deflecting any scrutiny from her own actions while making others feel morally compelled to rescue her. I'd seen this show 100 times. The deeper I delved into the past, the more I understood just how thoroughly entangled our lives had become. I remembered the $5,000 she'd borrowed for years ago for emergency dental work that miraculously funded a last-minute trip to Cancun. I remembered the cold dread that settled in my stomach when I discovered she'd stolen my identity in our 20s to open 3 credit cards, leaving me to meticulously unravel the financial mess. And I certainly hadn't forgotten how she'd poisoned our parents against me, painting me as cold and selfish simply because I'd refused to co-sign on her mortgage after the identity theft debacle. Now, her marriage to Eric was crumbling, and somehow, by some unspoken decree, her financial woes had become my solemn obligation. "Charlotte, we've been over this," I heard myself say, trying to keep my voice even, though my pulse hammered against my temples. "I gave you $3,000 last month. I paid your electricity bill. I bought groceries for your kids. I'm not financing your entire divorce." My mother's laugh was a harsh, bitter bark that scraped against my ears. $3,000? You live in this mansion, drive that expensive car, take vacations twice a year. Your sister gave up her career to raise her children, to support her husband, and now she has nothing. The least you can do is help her get back on her feet. It was the same familiar script, the same distortion of reality. The mansion was a modest 3-bedroom house I'd saved for 7 years to buy, sacrificing weekend trips and new clothes. The expensive car was a certified pre-owned sedan I'd paid for in cash, meticulously budgeting for years. And the vacations were camping trips to state parks, far from the luxury she implied. But facts had never mattered much to my mother when Charlotte needed rescuing. That's another fascinating dynamic in some families. The truth becomes secondary to the narrative, especially when that narrative serves to protect a favored child or maintain a long-standing power imbalance. Objective reality dissolves under the weight of emotional appeals and carefully curated suffering. "I'm not paying for her divorce lawyer," I stated, my voice firm despite the internal tremor. Eric has to pay spousal support. The court already ordered it. Charlotte's voice escalated, morphing into a piercing shriek that made me flinch. The court process takes months. What am I supposed to do until then? Live in a shelter? Let my children starve. The hyperbole was breathtaking. She lived in the house they'd bought together, the one Eric had moved out of. She was receiving temporary support of $2,000 a month while proceedings continued. My parents, had already given her $10,000. My Aunt Paula had chipped in another $5,000. Her spending habits hadn't adjusted to her new, albeit temporary, circumstances, and she absolutely refused to consider that maybe, just maybe, she should. You need a budget, I said, trying to inject some logic into the emotional maelstrom. Get a job. There are lots of options. My mother's hand twitched, and I braced myself, a knot forming in my stomach, wondering if another slap was coming. Instead, she stepped closer, her finger jabbing accusingly toward my face, her breath hot on my skin. How dare you speak to your sister like that? She's vulnerable right now. She's traumatized, and you sit here in your comfortable life, judging her while she's drowning. All the while, those tiny, unblinking eyes of the cameras were recording everything. I'd positioned them carefully, one on the bookshelf behind me, another hidden in the air purifier near the window, one cleverly disguised in the picture frame on the wall, another in the desk lamp, and a final one in the ceiling's smoke detector. My attorney had the access codes. He was probably watching this unfold in real time. I'm not judging anyone, I replied, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm in my chest. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Charlotte sank into the chair across from my desk, her shoulders shaking with carefully calibrated sobs. You were always Dad's favorite, always the smart one, the responsible one. I was just the pretty one, the one who didn't matter. Now you have everything and I have nothing, and you won't even help me. The revisionist history of our childhood made my stomach churn with a mixture of anger and despair. Dad had never played favorites. If anything, he'd spent more time trying to help Charlotte navigate her impulsive decisions, bailing her out of one crisis after another until his death 5 years ago. He'd left us equal inheritances, which Charlotte had, predictably, blown through in 18 months on a kitchen renovation and a boat Eric wanted. I've helped you repeatedly, I insisted, the words feeling futile. I'm still helping you. What I won't do is pay $20,000 for your divorce attorney when you're capable of working and providing for yourself. Capable. Mom's voice dropped to something dangerous, a low growl. She has 2 young children. She has no recent work experience. She has trauma from her marriage. You want her to what? Work at a fast food restaurant? Humiliate herself while you live in luxury. The word luxury almost made me laugh, a bitter, humorless sound that caught in my throat. My own journey had been a relentless climb, building my career through night classes and weekend certifications while working full-time. I'd lived with roommates until I was 32, packed lunch from home every single day for a decade. Every dollar I had, every ounce of security, I'd earned through careful planning and sacrifice. Charlotte, on the other hand, had married Eric right out of college, worked for 2 years, then decided to be a stay-at-home mother after Sophie was born. That was her choice, and I'd never criticized it. But somehow, her choices had now become my obligation, a burden she expected me to shoulder without question. When you live in a family system where one person is constantly enabled, setting boundaries feels like an act of war, not self-preservation. It's a dynamic rooted in fear of rejection, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of disrupting a fragile peace that was never truly peaceful to begin with. The sunk cost fallacy played a huge role in my own behavior. I'd invested so much emotional energy and actual money into bailing Charlotte out that part of me believed I had to keep going to justify all the past sacrifices. But the well was dry, and I was tired of being the only one holding the bucket. Listen to me very carefully, I said, pushing myself up from my desk, my voice rising slightly, shaking with a new resolve. I love Charlotte. I love Sophie and Dylan. I will continue to help in reasonable ways, but I am not liquidating my savings account to fund a divorce that Eric is legally required to pay for through spousal and child support. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken finality. My mother's response was a second slap, invisible but far more devastating than the first. Then you're not part of this family anymore. Her voice, devoid of all warmth, chipped away at something fundamental inside me. If you abandon your sister in her darkest hour, you're no daughter of mine. You can forget about holidays, forget about birthday calls, forget about being an aunt to Sophie and Dylan. We're done. The ultimatum hung between us, a tangible, suffocating weight. I'd known it was coming. Charlotte had been systematically poisoning Mom against me for weeks, carefully crafting stories about my cruelty and selfishness. Still, hearing it spoken aloud, with such cold finality, made something crack inside my chest. A deep, agonizing fracture. "That's your choice," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper, thick with unshed tears. "But you need to leave my house now. Both of you." Charlotte's head snapped up, her tears instantly drying, as if someone had flipped a switch. "What?" "Leave," I repeated, my voice gaining strength with each word. "You came here to threaten me, to assault me, to manipulate me. I'm done with this conversation." Mom moved toward me again, her eyes narrowed, her hand clenching, and I instinctively stepped back, putting the heavy desk between us. "Don't you dare kick us out. This is about family. This is about loyalty." "No," I countered, my voice now loud and clear. "This is about boundaries. I've asked you to leave. If you don't, I'll call the police." The shocked silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Charlotte stood slowly, her expression shifting from feigned vulnerability to genuine, venomous rage. "You'd actually do that? Call the cops on your own mother, if she hits me again." "Absolutely." Mom's face flushed a dark, mottled red. "You're making a huge mistake. When you come crawling back, begging to be part of our lives again, don't expect forgiveness." "I'm not the one who needs forgiveness," I stated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. They left. Charlotte grabbed her purse and stormed out without another word, her anger a palpable force. Mom paused at the door, looking back at me with something that was undeniably disgust. "Your father would be ashamed of you." That one hit hard. A searing white-hot pain blossomed in my chest. I'd adored my father, and he'd always been proud of my accomplishments, my independence. But Mom had always resented that bond, always felt left out of our connection. After his death, she'd leaned more heavily on Charlotte, finding purpose in managing her endless dramas. "Dad taught me to stand up for myself," I replied, my voice hoarse. "That's exactly what I'm doing." The door slammed shut with a final, echoing thud, leaving me in the abrupt, overwhelming silence. I sank back into my chair, my entire body shaking with a violent rush of adrenaline, the residue of a battle I never wanted to fight. My phone buzzed, vibrating against the polished wood of my desk. A text from my attorney. "Got everything recorded. That was assault and battery. Also, extortion attempt. Call me when you're ready to talk next steps." I stared at the message, the words swimming before my eyes, trying to process the seismic shift that had just occurred in my life. My mother had hit me. My sister had tried to blackmail me. Both of them had threatened to cut me out of the family unless I handed over money I'd worked years to save. The sad, terrifying truth was, a part of me still wanted to give in. Part of me wanted to write the check, smooth everything over, pretend this never happened. That's what I'd always done. Kept the peace, absorbed the damage, made myself smaller so Charlotte could shine brighter. But the thought of shrinking again, of erasing myself one more time, tasted like bile. I was so tired of shrinking. I called my attorney. Richard Chin answered on the first ring, his voice crisp and professionally calm. "Are you all right?" "Not really," I admitted, my voice raw, "but I will be." "That was clear-cut assault," he stated, his tone leaving no room for debate. "If you want to press charges, we have everything documented. Multiple camera angles, clear audio, unprovoked attack." The idea of pressing charges against my own mother made me feel sick, a cold dread twisting in my gut despite everything she'd done. "I need time to think about that." "Understood. But there's something else." The extortion attempt, demanding money under threat of familial excommunication, combined with the assault, creates a pattern of coercive behavior. If your sister continues this campaign against you, especially if she involves other family members or tries to damage your reputation professionally, you have grounds for a restraining order. It won't come to that, I said, the words a hollow hope. Even as I spoke, I knew I didn't truly believe it. I hope you're right. In the meantime, I'd recommend changing your locks. If your mother has a key to your house, she's demonstrated she can't be trusted with that access. He was right. Mom had a spare key for emergencies. I'd given it to her 3 years ago when I went on vacation and never asked for it back. The thought of her letting herself in, of finding her waiting in my living room with more demands or accusations, made my skin crawl with revulsion. I'll call a locksmith today, I said, a decision solidifying. Good. Document everything going forward. Save all texts, all voicemails, all emails. If anyone else in your family contacts you about this situation, be polite but firm. Don't engage in arguments. Don't. Can effort. Her expression shifted then, the desperation sliding into cold, venomous hatred. This is about punishment, isn't it? You're still mad about the credit cards. You're punishing me for something that happened 15 years ago. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm maintaining boundaries. Boundaries. She spat the word like a curse, as if it were a vile obscenity. That's just a fancy term for selfishness. You have so much, and you refuse to share it. What kind of person does that make you? A security guard approached us, clearly noticing the commotion. Is everything all right here? Everything's fine, Charlotte said quickly, her voice instantly shifting to something sweet and harmless. Just having a conversation with my sister. Ma'am, you need to step back, the guard said, addressing Charlotte directly. You're causing a disturbance. She looked at me one last time, and the hatred in her eyes was so intense it made me take an involuntary step backward. You're going to regret this when Sophie and Dylan ask why their aunt doesn't love them anymore. I'll make sure they know exactly what kind of person you are. Then she left, striding across the parking lot to her SUV, the one she'd insisted she needed for the kids' safety, the one with monthly payments she could barely afford, and peeling out with a screech of tires. Jennifer appeared beside me, her face pale. That was intense. She threatened to turn my niece and nephew against me. She'll probably try, Jennifer sighed, but kids grow up. Eventually, they ask their own questions and form their own conclusions. If you stay consistent, stay honest, they'll figure it out. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to think that someday Sophie and Dylan would understand why their aunt had stepped back, why family relationships were far more complicated than their mother had taught them. But the wait seemed impossibly long, and the cost impossibly high. That evening, I made my decision. I called Richard and told him I wanted to press charges for the assault. He walked me through the process, explained what to expect, and assured me I was making the right choice. Then, with Richard's input, I drafted a message to send to both Mom and Charlotte. Carefully worded, devoid of emotion, factual. I love both of you, but I will not tolerate physical violence, harassment, or threats. I'm willing to maintain a relationship if we can establish healthy boundaries and mutual respect. However, any further attempts to coerce, manipulate, or intimidate me will result in legal action. I hope we can move forward constructively. I sent it at 8 p.m. By 8:15, my phone was exploding with responses. Mom, legal action against your own family? You've lost your mind. Charlotte, this is proof you never loved us. You're not my sister anymore. Paula, I'm ashamed to be related to you. More messages followed, each one angrier than the last. I muted the conversations and tried to breathe through the anxiety clawing at my chest. The police report was filed on Monday morning. The officer who took my statement was professional and kind, reviewing the camera footage with careful attention. This is pretty clear-cut, she said. Unprovoked assault in your own home. Does she have a history of violence? No, I replied, the word feeling strange on my tongue. This was the first time. Often is until it isn't, she responded, her eyes meeting mine with a quiet understanding. You did the right thing documenting everything. A warrant was issued. Mom was arrested Tuesday afternoon and released on her own recognizance, pending a court date. Charlotte's social media erupted with posts about police brutality and family betrayal, painting Mom as a victim of my vindictiveness. The comment section filled with people I'd never met, calling me horrible names, threatening me with karmic justice. I deactivated all my social media accounts. It was easier than watching people who knew nothing about the situation judge me based on Charlotte's lies. Wednesday brought a process server to Charlotte's door with a cease and desist letter, formally demanding she stop harassing me at home and work. She violated it Thursday by leaving a 20-minute voicemail on my work phone, screaming about how I'd destroyed our family, how Mom was having panic attacks because of the criminal charges, how Sophie cried herself to sleep asking why Auntie didn't love her anymore. The voicemail went straight to Richard, who added it to our file and filed for a restraining order. Friday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Is this Charlotte's sister?" A male voice, unfamiliar. "Who is asking?" "This is Eric. We need to talk." My heart rate spiked. Eric and I had barely spoken during his marriage to Charlotte, exchanging pleasantries at family gatherings, but never developing any real connection. Hearing from him now felt ominous. "I'm not sure we have anything to discuss," I said carefully, my hand clammy around the phone. "Actually, we do. I've been hearing some interesting things from Charlotte about your financial situation, about how you're living beyond your means, about how you're desperate for money. She's planning to use that in court to prove you're an unreliable witness if I try to bring you in to testify about her spending habits." The manipulation was breathtaking. Charlotte was creating a counter-narrative, preparing to destroy my credibility before I could even damage hers. This wasn't just about money or physical assault anymore. It was about weaponizing the most vulnerable players, the children. In family conflicts, manipulating kids is a particularly insidious tactic. It exploits their innocence and loyalty, forcing them to carry adult burdens and creating a false narrative that can deeply scar their understanding of love and family. Courts often view such actions dimly, recognizing the profound psychological harm inflicted. "None of that is true," I stated, my voice firm. "I know," Eric replied, his voice calm. "I've known Charlotte for 12 years. I know how she operates, but I wanted to warn you. She's building a whole case against you. She's got your mother ready to testify that you're mentally unstable, that you've always been jealous of Charlotte, that you're making false accusations to hurt the family." "Why are you telling me this?" Eric was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm tired of watching her destroy people. She did it to me for years, and I let her because I didn't want to admit I'd married someone capable of that level of cruelty. But you're fighting back, and I think you should know what's coming." "Thank you," I said, unsure what else to say. "One more thing. If you need character witnesses, people who can testify to Charlotte's patterns, I know at least 4 other people she's burned who'd probably be willing to help. She's been pulling this routine her whole life." After we hung up, I sat with that information, feeling something shift inside me. I wasn't alone in this. Other people had seen through Charlotte's act. Other people had been damaged by her manipulations and lies. The following week brought an unexpected visitor to my door. Through the peephole, I could see a woman in her mid-40s, professionally dressed, with a nervous posture. She rang the bell twice before I finally opened it, keeping the chain lock. "Engaged. Can I help you? My name is Linda Morrison. Eric gave me your number, but I wanted to come in person. I'm one of Charlotte's former friends." Something in her expression, a mixture of determination and embarrassment, made me undo the chain and invite her inside. We sat in my living room, and she pulled out her phone, scrolling to a series of screenshots. Charlotte and I were close for about 3 years. Our daughters were in the same class. We had playdates, went to school events together, talked almost daily. Linda's hands shook slightly as she held the phone. Then I made the mistake of lending her money. $5,000. She said Eric's business was having a temporary cash flow problem, that they'd pay me back in 2 months. "Let me guess," I said quietly, a familiar dread coiling in my stomach. "You never saw it again." "Worse than that." When I finally asked about it after 6 months, she told everyone I tried to extort her. Said I was obsessed with her family, that I'd given her a gift and was now trying to claim it was a loan. She showed people fake text messages. I don't know how she doctored them, where I supposedly told her to keep the money. My reputation in the school community was destroyed. Other mothers stopped talking to me. My daughter lost friends. Linda wiped her eyes, though no tears had fallen yet. Eric reached out last week. He said you were dealing with Charlotte's tactics and might need people who could testify to her patterns. I have documentation, bank transfers, original text messages, emails, everything she claimed didn't exist. Why are you willing to come forward now? Because I've watched her do this to other people for years. Because my daughter is in therapy because of the bullying that followed Charlotte's smear campaign. Because someone needs to stop her. Linda's voice hardened with resolve. I have nothing to lose at this point. She already took my reputation. She can't take anything else. Over the next hour, Linda shared the full story. Charlotte had targeted multiple women in her social circle, always with the same pattern: build trust, create a crisis, extract money or favors, then either ghost them or destroy them when they asked questions. She'd borrowed designer handbags and returned them damaged, claiming they'd arrived that way. She'd coordinated group gifts for teachers and pocketed half the money. She'd volunteered to organize a charity fundraiser and kept $3,000 of the proceeds. How did she get away with it? I asked, bewildered. She's careful. She picks targets who won't fight back, people who are conflict-averse, who care about their reputation, who have something to lose. And she's brilliant at playing the victim. By the time anyone realizes what happened, she's already convinced everyone else that she's the injured party. Linda pulled out a business card. This is my attorney. If you need witnesses for any legal proceedings, call her. She's already prepared a detailed statement about Charlotte's history. After Linda left, I called Richard and told him about the meeting. He was quiet for a long moment before speaking. This changes things. If we can establish a pattern of fraudulent behavior, it strengthens your case considerably. It shows Charlotte's current accusations aren't isolated incidents, but part of a documented history. More importantly, it might help protect others from becoming her next targets. Do you think the judge will allow it in the restraining order hearing? Yes, I think we can argue relevance. It goes to credibility and demonstrates why you felt threatened by her escalating demands. Let me reach out to Linda's attorney and coordinate. That evening, I received an email from someone named Brittany Caldwell. The subject line read, "You don't know me, but I know your sister." The message detailed another story, nearly identical to Linda's. Charlotte had befriended Brittany at a yoga studio, cultivated a friendship over months, then asked to borrow Brittany's car for a weekend trip. She'd returned it with a cracked windshield and refused to pay for repairs, claiming it had been pre-existing damage. When Brittany pushed back, Charlotte filed a police report claiming Brittany had harassed her, had shown up at her house making threats, had tried to run her off the road. None of it was true. Brittany had security camera footage proving she'd been at work during the alleged incidents. But the accusations had been enough to cause problems in Brittany's life: a visit from police, questions from her employer, stress that contributed to a breakup with her partner. Eric tracked me down through mutual connections. The email continued. He said you might need support. I'm willing to testify if it helps. Charlotte needs to be held accountable before she ruins more lives. I forwarded the email to Richard, then sat staring at my computer screen. How many people had Charlotte damaged over the years? How many victims had stayed silent because fighting back seemed too costly? My phone rang. An unknown number, but I answered anyway, tired of screening every call. This is Sophie. The small voice on the other end made my heart stop. Grandma, let me use her phone. Sophie, honey, are you okay? I miss you. Mommy says you don't want to see us anymore because we're too expensive. She says you only care about money. The manipulation was staggering. Charlotte was using her 9-year-old daughter as a weapon, forcing her to make this call to voice accusations she couldn't possibly understand. That's not true, sweetheart. I love you and Dylan so much. The situation between the adults is complicated, but it has nothing to do with how I feel about you. Then why don't you come visit? Sophie's voice cracked, and a fresh wave of guilt washed over me. Dylan asks about you all the time. He doesn't understand why you stopped coming to soccer games. It's not that I don't want to. There are some grown-up problems that make it hard right now, but I think about you both every single day. Mommy says. Sophie's voice cut off, replaced by my mother's harsh, furious tone. How dare you speak to her? You have a restraining order. I could have you arrested for this. She called me. I didn't initiate contact. You should have hung up immediately. But no, you had to poison her mind against her own mother. Fill her head with lies. I didn't say anything negative about Charlotte. I just told Sophie I love her. That's a lie in itself. You don't love anyone but yourself. You proved that when you had me arrested, when you took Charlotte to court, when you abandoned those children. Mom's breathing was ragged, furious. Sophie is crying now. Dylan heard her on the phone and now he's upset too. I hope you're happy. The line went dead. I sat holding the phone, feeling utterly sick. Charlotte had orchestrated that call, had coached Sophie on what to say, had used her own daughter's genuine confusion and pain as ammunition. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. I called Richard immediately. He listened to my account of the conversation, his professional calm steadying me. That was a setup. They wanted you to engage so they could claim you violated the restraining order. The fact that you kept the conversation appropriate and brief works in your favor, but document everything. Write down exactly what was said, what time the call came, the number it came from. They're using the kids to get to me. Yes, and that might actually help our case. Courts don't look favorably on parents who weaponize children in adult conflicts. If we can show Charlotte is coaching Sophie and Dylan to manipulate you, it could impact custody considerations. But knowing that didn't make it hurt less. Sophie's voice kept echoing in my mind. The confusion, the sadness, the belief that I'd abandoned her. Charlotte was shaping her children's understanding of events, creating a narrative where I was the villain and she was the suffering victim. The next morning brought another development. Eric's attorney contacted Richard with a proposal. They wanted me to provide a deposition for Eric's custody modification hearing. Charlotte's financial irresponsibility and pattern of manipulation were relevant to determining the children's best interests. My testimony, combined with the other witnesses Eric had gathered, could make a significant difference. Are you willing to do it? Richard asked when he called to discuss the request. Will it help Sophie and Dylan? Potentially, yes. If the court sees clear evidence of Charlotte's instability and manipulative behavior, they're more likely to grant Eric primary custody. That would give the kids more stability, more structure. Then, yes, I said, my decision unwavering. I'll do it. The deposition was scheduled for the following Thursday. I spent the intervening days preparing with Richard, reviewing timelines and documentation, trying to present facts without appearing vindictive. It was a delicate balance, being honest about Charlotte's behavior while not coming across as someone with an axe to grind. The morning of the deposition, I arrived at the attorney's office to find Charlotte already there with her lawyer. She stared at me with such hatred that I instinctively stepped back. Her attorney, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit, looked me up and down with obvious disdain. For 3 hours, they questioned me about everything: my financial situation, my relationship with Charlotte growing up, my abandonment of my niece and nephew, my decision to press assault charges against my mother. Charlotte's attorney tried repeatedly to paint me as jealous, vindictive, and unstable. But I had documentation for everything. Bank statements showing the money I'd given Charlotte over the years. Text messages showing her escalating demands. The assault captured on camera. Medical records from the therapy I'd started after the confrontation, showing the emotional toll of the harassment. You claim to love your niece and nephew, Charlotte's attorney said at one point, her tone accusatory, yet you haven't seen them in months. Because your client and my mother have a restraining order against them, I replied, my voice steady, and they have primary custody of the children. That makes visits impossible. You could have petitioned for visitation rights. After your client coached my 9-year-old niece to call me and deliver a manipulative message, after she threatened to turn the children against me, I'm protecting Sophie and Dylan from being used as weapons in an adult conflict. Charlotte stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly across the floor, the sound jarring. This is ridiculous. She's lying about everything. She's always been jealous of me, always wanted what I had. Now she's trying to take my children. "Mrs. Thompson, please sit down," her attorney said sharply, her face tight with exasperation. "No, I won't sit here and listen to this. She's destroying our family. She had our mother arrested. She refused to help me when I needed her most, and now she's conspiring with my ex-husband to steal my kids." The court reporter's fingers never stopped moving, capturing every word of Charlotte's outburst. Her attorney looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. Eric's attorney spoke calmly. "For the record, you're confirming that you view your sister's refusal to give you money as a hostile act? She has so much and I have nothing." "Yes, I think that's hostile. I think that's cruel. And you believe you're entitled to her money? We're family. Family helps each other even when that help involves tens of thousands of dollars. Even when the person asking has a history of not repaying loans." Charlotte's face flushed a deep red. "That credit card thing was 15 years ago. She needs to let it go. What about the $5,000 you borrowed 4 years ago for dental work that turned into a vacation?" "I don't have to answer these questions." Charlotte grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Her attorney called after her, but she was already gone, her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway. The deposition ended shortly after. Eric's attorney looked satisfied. Richard looked cautiously optimistic. "I just felt utterly exhausted, drained." "That went better than expected," Richard said as we walked to our cars. Her outburst undermined her entire defense strategy. She essentially confirmed everything we've been saying about her sense of entitlement and emotional instability. Will it be enough to change custody, combined with everything else? "I think so. But you should prepare yourself for the fallout. She's going to blame you for losing her kids." He was right. Of course, the fallout came swiftly and viciously. The restraining order hearing happened 2 weeks later. Charlotte showed up with our mother and Aunt Paula. All three dressed like they were attending a funeral, tissues clutched in their hands. They testified tearfully about my history of instability, about my jealousy towards Charlotte, about my refusal to help family members in need. Then Richard presented the evidence. The camera footage of the assault, crystal clear and undeniable. The threatening messages and voicemails. The harassment at my workplace. The meticulous timeline of escalating demands for money followed by retaliation when I refused. The judge granted the restraining order. Charlotte and Mom were required to stay at least 500 feet away from me and my home. No contact except through attorneys. No third-party harassment through other family members. Charlotte's face as the judge read the order was something I'd never forget. Pure shock, as if she couldn't believe her tactics had finally failed to work. Outside the courtroom, Paula caught up with me, her face pinched with disapproval. "I can't believe you did this. Your own mother and sister. They assaulted me. They harassed me. They made my life miserable for refusing to be their personal bank account. Family takes care of family. Family also respects boundaries," I countered, my voice tight. "Family doesn't hit each other. Family doesn't threaten each other." She shook her head sadly. "You changed. You used to be such a sweet girl." "I used to be a doormat," I replied, a tired sigh escaping my lips. "There's a difference. 6 months have passed now." The criminal assault case against Mom resulted in a plea deal, a suspended sentence, anger management classes, and probation. She blamed me for the entire thing. Sent me one final message. Through her attorney saying I was dead to her. Charlotte's divorce finalized 3 months ago. Eric got primary custody of Sophie and Dylan after evidence emerged of Charlotte's financial instability and refusal to seek employment. She got them every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. The court ordered her to get a job within 90 days or face contempt charges. She works at a dental office now, managing the front desk. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment and drives a used sedan. Her social media has gone quiet, the constant posts about her victim status replaced by pictures of her kids during her custody time. I haven't spoken to her since the restraining order. I haven't spoken to Mom either. Paula sent me one last message 2 months ago, Charlotte's struggling. "This is all your fault." I didn't respond. The hardest part is missing Sophie and Dylan. I think about them constantly. Wonder how they're doing, whether they remember me. Eric sends me photos sometimes, a small kindness he doesn't owe me. In them, The kids look happy and healthy. That has to be enough. Jennifer says the grief comes in waves. And she's right. Some days I'm fine, confident in my choices, secure in my boundaries. Other days I doubt everything. Wonder if I should have just paid the money and kept the peace. But then I remember my mother's hand hitting my face. Remember Charlotte's threats and manipulations. Remember the years of being diminished and dismissed and used. I remember that love without respect isn't really love at all. I built a good life through hard work and sacrifice. I surrounded myself with people who value me for who I am, not for what I can provide. I learned that protecting myself isn't selfish, it's survival. My family made their choices. They chose money over relationship, entitlement over understanding, control over connection. I made different choices. I chose my dignity, my safety, and my peace. Sometimes the price of freedom is loneliness, but I'd rather be alone than constantly diminished. I'd rather have silence than abuse disguised as love. The cameras are still in my office, though I rarely think about them anymore. They're just another security measure, another boundary, another way of protecting the life I've built. Charlotte wanted me to pay for her divorce. In the end, we all paid different prices. She paid with her children's custody and her comfortable lifestyle. Mom paid with criminal charges and a broken relationship with her daughter. I paid with family connections and the dream of what we could have been if they'd chosen differently. But I kept my self-respect. I kept my savings. I kept my boundaries. And ultimately, that's worth more than any amount of money I could have given. This story forces us to confront a difficult question. When does the sacred bond of family obligation end and the necessity of self-preservation begin? Where would you draw that line?